Hello, hello, hello. It's Lisa Copeland. Happy Monday. I know today's a holiday for many people. And if you're in school, I know that there's a lot of kids are back in school today making up for being off for the last 6 months. So I'm really excited today. I've really kept my eye on what's going on for this election in November. And those of you who know me know that I just can't help but get involved. And I know a lot of us out there, we all have very, very definite opinions about the national races. But how many of you really know what's going on in your backyard? I will be the first one to tell you. I could have told you that I can tell you the platform of my candidates on a national level and their opponents. But then I really started to check myself and I thought, what the heck is going on in my backyard? There has been a lot of stuff. I live in Cedar Park, Texas, and there's been a lot of stuff that's happened in my backyard that's even made the national news. So as I started to dig around, these House district races are so important. And I happen to live in District 136, which is Cedar Park, Leander, and then Northwest Austin. And so I've done something I've never done before. I called up the candidate who is running against the incumbent. And I said, for you to earn my vote, I need to know some more about you. Are you willing to, have a conversation with me, to get on a Facebook Live show and have an honest conversation? And, you always think with politicians and with candidates, oh, they're so busy, they're out block walking, they're out doing whatever. But, my guest said, absolutely, no holds barred. You ask me what you want to ask me because, I am committed to be a servant of the people. On top of the fact, I'll be honest with you, Lisa, I want your vote. But see, somebody doesn't just get my vote. They have to earn my vote. And so anyways, I'm really excited to bring on my guest, Mike Guevara. He is a resident of Cedar Park, Texas. He just formally stepped down from our city council, which is a nonpartisan council, where he did some really good work for us. And he's thrown his hat into a race for Texas, for the Texas District 136. And it's not going to be an easy race, right? And so anyways, he has agreed to be on the show. He's agreed to answer some questions for me. If you live in Central Texas, if you live in Austin, because he also is looking to run for part of Northwest Austin. If you live there, share this out, ask your questions. We all have a right to know what's going on in our backyard. I think we can just get so hyper focused on these national races, which frankly, I don't feel like I have anything or any say in what I can do on these races. And all I can do is I can vote, just like every single one of you. But on our local races, when things are going on in our backyard, I think we got to start taking care of what's happening at home. So without further ado, I want to bring on the Republican candidate for House District 136, which is Northwest Austin, Cedar Park, and Leander, Texas, Mike Guevara. Mike, hello.
Hi, good morning, Lisa. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Did you eat your Wheaties this morning? That's what I need to know. I have so many questions for you.
What's that?
I have so many questions for you.
I actually took advantage of the holiday and took my son down to Rudy's and got a breakfast taco this morning. So spending time with my son. So I think I'm good.
Oh, that's great. My grandkids, now they're in Belton School District, but they had to go to school today.
Oh, really?
Yep. And I asked, and my oldest one's in third grade, and I was with him yesterday, and I said, Eli, how come you have to go to school today? He goes, because we got a lot of time to make up for Lala. I'm glad at 8 years old, he understands that. So Mike, tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. Like you said, my name is Mike Guevara, and I heard your intro, and I was on the Cedar Park City Council for about 2.5 years. It was supposed to be 2 years, but because of the COVID, our May elections were pushed into November. I just officially resigned. Our charter has a clause that once you get so close to an election, if you've run for another spot, then you have to resign. So officially resigned from the council. Enjoyed that opportunity being on the council. I've lived here in District 136 in Cedar Park. It'll be 20 years in January, so I've been here quite a while since I graduated from the University of Texas School of Law. And my primary practice is I actually represent municipalities. So when I was recruited to run for city council, the first question that was asked of me is, what do you know about municipal governments? I actually thought it was a joke when they asked me the question, because it's basically what I do every day. Right. And so I ran for the council. But, with that experience of working for cities as their city attorney, I get to handle all kinds of things. Legislation, I get to draft legislation, enact legislation, enforce legislation. I've worked with individuals from the federal government, state government, county governments, other municipalities, across both parties. So I've got a lot of experience doing with that. I'm a prosecutor, so I understand the justice system. So that's my primary work. I'm also blessed to work with foster families as they're trying to adopt kids out of the CPS system. My dad was a police officer. He did 41 years for the city of Dallas, so law enforcement is a big deal for me. My mom was a school nurse with the Dallas Independent School District, and then she went to a private school from there she retired from. So, that's my background. That's where I'm from. I'm a follower of Christ. My wife, Amy, and I attend Hill Country Bible Church, and we have 2 children, Chloe, who's 11, and Anthony, who is 8. So that's real quick who I am.
What is your wife doing?
We're blessed that she's able to be a stay-at-home mom. She actually worked at a bank right up until our daughter was born, and then she's been able to stay home with them, which I believe is invaluable to their development. So I know not everybody can do it, but we're very blessed for her to be able to do that.
That's awesome. So, we've got a little bit of feedback. I'm not sure if you've got your phone next to you and it's playing, but you just want to turn down the volume.
My phone is off, so I don't know.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure.
Turn the volume.
That's okay. We'll just push through it. All right. So it's very interesting. So you're an attorney that represents municipalities. Now, are you currently, with your law firm, representing any municipalities that we would know of, or in Central Texas?
So in Central Texas, I'm the city attorney for Bertram, which is in Burnett County. Oh. And we've done some work for Bartlett, which is right on the edge of Bell and Williamson County. And I'm also city attorney for Holland, which is in Bell County. We got some other cities you get further out in the hill country, like Lomita, and some cities around the San Antonio, New Braunfels area. And I represent cities all the way up to Wichita Falls, up to the Lubbock area.
No kidding. My husband and I just bought a land in Florence, and we're building kind of a weekend home there. So right all up in there. So if you should happen to be elected to this position, well, does that mean that you have to, or you will give up your law practice, or will you be able to do both?
Yes, I'll be able to do both. I actually I was able to hire a new attorney to come in and work for me. He started right after Labor Day this year. I've been courting him for 3 years, and he finally decided he wanted to move back to Texas. And
Longhorn or Aggie?
Well, actually, he's a West Virginia Mountaineer.
Huh?
He's a West Virginia Mountaineer.
Oh, okay.
He's from here. He's from Round Rock originally, and went off to West Virginia to get his law degree. So he's still Big 12, but we don't have to have quite the rivalry, which is good. So one weekend a year we get to be at odds, but besides that, it's been a good fit. So hopefully he's going to be and has been in the position to start taking over some of that stuff, the slack, because that was the reason. Because I am planning on winning and representing the House District 136 in Austin in the winter and spring. So I wanted to have somebody who could step into my shoes and keep the law practice going.
Okay, so let me ask you about that. You said something about the police and justice and being you're currently a prosecutor, or you're a former prosecutor?
No, I'm currently the prosecutor for multiple municipalities.
Okay, so something that has been really, really, and this is one of the reasons I reached out to you. I'm losing track of time now, but in the last, I'd say 90 days, our beautiful town that you and I both live in, Cedar Park, Texas, made the national news. Yes. And we made the national news because of a gun standoff, because of a hostage situation that all of our law enforcement, all the cities, municipalities, it seems like everybody came together and successfully, negotiated away or I don't know the word I'm looking for, but successfully after many days ended it without violence.
Right. And
they did a really good job. So my hat's off to all the law enforcement out there. I am a big supporter of the blue, and I am forever grateful for those that are willing to go out and put their lives on the line every single day for us. But of course, you cannot turn on the news today. And especially, so we are in Williamson County, you and I, and we join up to Travis County, which of course is where the state capital of Texas is, Austin, Texas. And in the wake of many things, the Austin City Council made the decision to defund the police department. Now, you hear all kinds of things, and I don't know if you've ever watched the movie on Netflix, Social Dilemma, but it's frightening. And so my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that Austin voted to cut the police budget by 1/3, and that includes parks, drugs, and DWIs. Am I correct with that?
Yes, that's my understanding from the documentation that I have read. $150 million.
Mm-hmm. And so, will you give me your definition of defunding the police? Because I will tell you, I put that up and I got some blowback from some people around the country. And they said, that isn't what it means. And I said, you cut the budget of the police department $150 million. You cannot keep everybody on the payroll. Like, I have run many, many multi-million-dollar businesses, and I know what it is to cut the budget. You end up cutting human capital.
Sure. So let's go back to the original question, and I'll talk to a little bit more about the effects of defunding. So you asked an excellent question, and I think that's a question that a lot of people have been, I don't know if struggling with, but there's some disagreement on what the term defunding is meant. Is we've been block walking, and I've block walked at least one day a week, sometimes 2-3 days a week since August 1st. So we've been out there knocking on doors. I have a very loyal group of supporters. And so that's one of the things that people really want to talk about is the defunding of police. When Austin cut the budget $150 million, my phone blew up from residents in Cedar Park. What is Cedar Park going to do? Because we share a border.
That's the reason I called you. I'm like, this is not happening in my hometown.
Right. And we've had a lot of that. So I had a conversation with an individual at the door, several individuals, about the term defunding, and one of them actually told me that it was to use the term defunding was a lie, and that he hoped that I was not spreading that around. And so it ended up that he went out after we spoke, and he walked and he found us, and we had a great conversation. I'll get to that in a second. But you talk about defunding and city budgets. I'm very familiar with city budgets, being on city council in Cedar Park. We passed 3 budgets as a city attorney for small municipalities. I mean, I have been actually the person, which it's not necessarily my role, that has had the budget in hand, gone through it, set the tax rate, done everything for some of these small cities. So I'm very familiar with budgets. And the term defunding does not mean abolish. If we were saying abolish the police, that would be a different. Now, that's been spoken about in other parts of the country, but let's just make it simple. You've got 2 pots of money. You have $100,000 to spend. You put 50 in one pot, 50 in another pot. If you take money out of pot A and put it in pot B, you are defunding pot A. It's that simple. You're not saying you're abolishing pot A and pot A is going away, but you are absolutely defunding it. And so what Austin did is they defunded the police. There's no other way to talk about that. And when you talk about specifically what Austin did, the most disheartening thing for me as a minority, as a Hispanic, is that even though Austin PD was already short officers, they cut 3 academy classes. And those 3 academy classes were a majority minority. And so we were actually putting more minority officers into the Austin Police Department than Caucasian officers. And that's what I hear the rhetoric screaming and yelling is equality. And so we were actually going majority minority, and that got cut. And they also cut training. So you hear talking about the training, and training is very, very important. And you talked about what happened in Cedar Park, and we had 3 officers that were shot on that. And there's been some talk, and I have some friends who are social workers because I work with the foster agencies, and so we've had some time to talk about this. But those officers went in; they were armed, they were trained. One of the officers, it was her vest that saved her. And if you were to send a social worker in on that situation, I don't need to explain to you what would happen to that social worker, because they don't have that training. And so, Chief Mike Harmon, our department did a fantastic job with the help.
I commend them highly. I do. I'm very proud of them.
Yes. And one of the things and go back and look, if you haven't look at his interview that he gave that night. I mean, it was humane is the only way that I could put it. There was compassion to everybody, even to the person who had shot his 3 officers. You could tell that there was compassion in him, and he was treating this person just as a person, not as a suspect or someone need to be taken out, but a person, and doing. I believe that's the reason that it went well. But the officers have training. Yes, they're not social workers, but they do have mental health training for the bigger departments. And that's actually one thing I would like to see as if I become state representative, is I would like to see that the state of Texas uses the resources to train our department, to our DPS officers. But a lot of smaller departments, particularly the ones I work with, they don't have the resources and the funding to do those types of level of training. I'd like to see the state use those resources, and when they have classes, invite the small communities to send their.
I was just going to say that. Why are we not inviting the smaller police teams in and forces in to benefit from? I know the great strength. I mean, our DPS in Texas, they are second to none. Those guys love them. I don't love them when they pull me over on I-35 because I'm speeding, but I do sleep better at night knowing that is to protect the great state of Texas. So, okay, so one of the reasons I called you, because this whole thing in Cedar Park really, I mean, it happened about 2 or 3 miles from my home. And, I had people from all over the country calling me because it made national news. And, I didn't really have my eyes really tight on this local race. I don't know why. I don't know why. Like in my backyard. I mean, I'm going to be the first one to admit that. And before I came on the show, I said, if you, whoever you are, wherever you are, you live in the country, you better be watching out what's going on in your backyard. And so I called several friends of mine trying to track you down, and because I want to have a conversation with you. And a good friend of mine told me that your opponent, and I don't know if this is true or not, I'm just asking you, you may or may not want to comment, that your opponent, John Bucy, contributed $2,500 to the Austin Justice Coalition. And one of the biggest, and maybe the reason it was formed was to defund the police department. And I'm like, you gotta be joking me. Like, what? And he's the incumbent. And so, do you comment on that?
Yeah, and I didn't see the check, but I know that it has been verified even with the Texas Ethics Commission, because as candidates or as elected officials, we do have to submit periodic reports. It's twice a year, and right before the election, it ramps up from that. But so that has been confirmed with the Texas Ethics Commission. Where I see it, most everything else is quite honestly is heartbreaking. As the son of a police officer who I watched my dad sacrifice so much for 41 years to keep the Dallas community safe, to provide that funding. And, that's one of the things that's interesting is that funding that was provided was actually from his campaign funding. So it was actually people who had provided him money. And so I wonder what they would think if they thought that some of their funds went to lobby to defund which was successful, the Austin Police Department. But if you go on the Austin Justice Coalition, and I haven't been there in a couple days, I want to say it was Friday was the last day I looked at it. It says right on the front page, imagine a world without police. And, I told you, I talked to that individual about the term defunding. And I told him, I said, go to the Austin Justice Coalition. You don't have to believe me. It doesn't say reimagined police. It doesn't say less police. It says imagine a world without police. And there's a little button right underneath it that says defund APD. And I assume I haven't clicked on the button, but I assume you click on that button and it tells you how to give and how to defund APD. And that's what our current state representative in Williamson County, House District 136, has provided funding to that organization. And unapologetically, I haven't heard apologizing or.
Have you debated him? Have you asked him this? Have you all had that conversation?
We have not had the conversation. We've done a couple forums, but unfortunately, there is no debate. I would love to have that opportunity if he wants to do that. But early voting starts tomorrow, so early voting does start tomorrow. So get out and vote on that. But as you talk about the defunding of the police in APD, well, I think that's really, really important to House District 136 as part of, as you said, part of Austin is in House District 136. So he gave funding to an organization that is actively trying to abolish, and it says without. I'm not talking about defunding. I'm talking about abolish the police. Gave money to an organization that wants to abolish the police in his district. Which
is my district, Mike.
Right. And
that's my friend's district. Of my friends that are watching this out there, listen to what he is saying.
So what's next? Cedar Park, Leander, Williamson County. What's next with the police going away? And we do share a border in Cedar Park. And like I said, I was on the city council. We actually just increased our police department budget in our last budget by about $500,000, and that's personnel. That's raises to keep the officers there. We did add an officer, so we added an additional $100,000 or so to add an officer, because that's something that's very, very important to us from a municipal perspective. As a city attorney, as a council member, if we can't enforce our laws, then we can't do anything else.
It's absolute anarchy.
Do water? Exactly. How can we provide you water, wastewater, keep your streets good? I've heard stories in Cedar Park, where I live, where we have an excellent police department, of graffiti all over, signs, gates to neighborhoods, gated communities being knocked down or broken into.
Mine was less than a month ago, and the neighborhood in front of mine got knocked down also. I don't know the details, but I've lived here 9 years and it's never happened before. They just rammed our gates. And
yeah, I'm hearing those stories. I mean, it's frightening to hear. We're a nation of laws. I mean, think about it. If we don't have laws, then we don't have a country, first of all, because we don't have borders. We don't have anything that separates us from any other country, our bordering countries. We don't have states. We don't have counties. We don't have cities. If we don't have laws to enforce, or people to enforce those laws. So
I got to ask you, you have a nice life. You live in Cedar Park. You've got a very successful law firm. You've got a beautiful family. You're absolutely throwing your hat into what is going to be an ugly race. I don't know necessarily your race ugly. Again, I do not know your opponent. But just overall, the temperature of America is so divided. Why did you do it?
It's a long story, but I'd like to look at it two ways. One is, as I said before, I have a wife, I have an 11-year-old, and I have an 8-year-old. And the pattern that I see this country going down in the media, and particularly if you watch through the Democratic debates when they were deciding who was going to be the Democratic candidate for president, quite honestly frightened me. To see where this is going. And it's only ramped up since then. I mean, they're talking about the Supreme Court right now. I watched a little bit this morning with Amy Barrett going forward, talk about if the Democrats can gain the House, the Senate, and the presidency, that they're going to add 4 more justices to the Supreme Court so they can completely control everything. I mean, what that would do would basically it would do away with the separation of powers that was established in our Constitution. So that's one of the reasons. It's wanting to have a country that's there for my family. That's the biggest thing. But for personally, because you're right, it wasn't an easy decision to do. But I really, going through and praying about it and talking to people, there's 2 books in the Bible. They're together, Nehemiah and Esther, and just going through that. And I really believe that if God could work in those situations through one individual, and I believe that the United States, unfortunately, is a post-Christian country, but has really, really strong influence here, that if God can do that through countries that didn't acknowledge his existence and his power, that he can do so much here in the United States if people will step up. And, I didn't want to be somebody who didn't answer the call. And when it was my time, such a time as this, that I didn't do it. So those are the 2 reasons. One, it was personal with my relationship with Christ, and the other one is because I want to see this country continue to be a great place for my family to live. And I really believe that if the wrong people get in control, that they will change the entire makeup of this country. One of the things that's been really interesting to me as we watch this, and is that it's almost like if you're patriotic, if you're a fan of the United States, then you're automatically a Trump supporter, you're a Republican. One of my neighbor's daughter, who's in high school, they had red, white, and blue lights that they put on their house during the COVID thing, when everybody said, decorate your house and everything. And his daughter came home, a high school student, and said, I want you to take those down because people might see those and think that we're Trumpies. And so, and I have a niece who lives in an apartment complex, and they sent out a flyer to everybody. They forbid them to fly the American flag at their apartment complex in Austin. And I'm just like, when did being a patriot and loving the red, white, and blue, when did that become partisan? I don't understand where that's coming from. And like I said, every little thing that we see just makes it a little more and more scary. But it's almost like you've got a party out there who hates what the United States is right now and feels like that it's got to be changed. And with everything that we've talked about the social injustice, anything, what change has all the rioting and the protesting brought on? I don't want to get into the federal stuff because I'm running for state, but Tim Scott, who's a senator, tried to bring across a bill to do law enforcement reform, and the Democrats voted it down. So, I mean, I'm not sure what they're actually asking for other than to change this great country that I live.
So, you mentioned earlier, and you brought this up, you said, you're Hispanic, and, and that you're proud. And so have you ever felt, do you feel like that you represent, all people, whether they're Hispanic or they're, like in our community, I'm trying to say, our community is made up of a lot of different people, a lot of nationalities, a lot of ethnicities, religions. Tell us how you're going to represent everybody, how it won't just be based on Christianity, or it won't just be based on, being a Republican. What is your view on representing people out there who don't look like us, who don't believe what we believe? I think that's an important question, because I don't know that anybody's really addressing it in any of the elections on either side.
Yeah, so let me start that question, because that is fantastic. Is one of the things that's been the greatest joy is being running for this office, and then I don't know why it didn't become such a big deal with Cedar Park, is I've had the opportunity to speak to, there are a ton of Hispanics that are voting for Trump. I mean, they're huge supporters of Trump.
Oh, my best friends, I went and picked up a Latino for Trump sign, and they got it in their front yard. The Contrerases. I mean, oh yeah.
I have a Latinos for Trump in my front yard, and I had somebody, I was like about ready to defend myself. This truck comes barreling into my driveway, and when my neighbor hops out, he goes, "Where did you get that? And how do I get one?" I mean, it's been a big deal, but we had a Trump parade that we did on Saturday, and I was amazed by how many Hispanic families are supporting Trump. And being Hispanic. Are you a
first generation college graduate, or did your father graduate before he served us? And like a little bit about your family and
sure. So my grandparents, my grandma was from Mexico. My grandfather was born here, but her only language, I shouldn't say her first language, her only language was Spanish. She died not knowing how to speak English. She had the equivalent of about a second or third grade education coming from Mexico. My father was actually one of 8, but he was actually the only one he was actually 8. And he was the only one who lived past the age of 2. So, and his dad died of a heart attack when he was 3. So he was raised by a single mom who didn't speak English. They were from San Antonio. His first language was was Spanish. In fact, he learned English is when he started going to school in San Antonio. They actually hit them with rulers every time they used Spanish. So that's how he learned English. But no, he actually was in the Air Force during the Vietnam era, and after that used the GI Bill to get an education at then Southwest Texas State University before becoming a police officer. So you looked at the American dream. Our family is the American dream. I mean, my dad grew up where one pair of jeans a year that's what he got, and they were extremely poor, and he worked really, really hard to make a life for my family better. And now I'm trying to even better, take it even further than what he did. And my mom, she's Italian actually, and her dad was from Italy, came over right after World War I and started working at Lockheed out in California, and worked there for I think about 40 years before retiring from there. So I'm actually from a family of immigrants.
I was about to say, you're from a family of immigrants. So I just find it interesting because so many people want to put people in buckets. Well, if you're Hispanic or African American, or if you're Muslim, or this or you're that, you must be a Democrat. And like that could be the farthest thing from the truth, because I've got so many Republican friends that are from everywhere, right? And so that's why I wanted you to tell everybody your story, that you are from a family of immigrants and that you're very proud to serve your country.
Before we jump on to the next thing, and one thing I wanted to say, one of the things that's been the greatest joy for me is learning this, is being able to talk to different individuals. And, as I've been going around, I've gotten to talk to a lot of Black people who live here in Cedar Park and in Leander. And every single one I've spoke to does not feel like race is an issue here. They feel like they're part of a community. Every single one has told me that. And so that was really, really good to hear. But the joy part has been, is I've really gotten to dive into and be really accepted by the Hindu community. And one of the things I think is interesting with them, they're very clear to tell you that they are American Hindu, not Hindu Americans. They're American Hindu. They have such a pride of being part of this community and being part of the United States of America, and working with them has been amazing. I actually have 5 or 6 of them who, after meeting to them and doing a forum with them, with their community, they actually started block walking for me. So it's just fantastic to see that. And so you talked about representation. I believe that America is the best place in the world to live. Is it perfect? No, but it's run by people. So it's never going to be perfect. But it is by far, I can't think of any place that even comes close to the United States of America. And what makes it great is because it gives you the opportunity to succeed, no matter what your color is. I do not believe that we have systemic racism in the United States right now. I have helped write police policies for departments all over the state, including use of force policies. There's nothing in there that is biased to race, religion, ethnicity, gender, sexual preference. Nothing in there is biased is towards that. So I don't believe that our foundation here is systemically racist. And so this is the greatest place to live. So furthering what our founding fathers have built upon and furthering this country and allowing the freedom, I think that's the best way to represent people of any color, ethnicity, race, and gender.
What will you stand for? And I'll put it out into the positive universe. When you are elected as our House District Representative, what will you stand for? What will your first 100 days look like? What are you going to go after?
So, first 100 days, that's interesting. Well, the things that I want to see our state stay strong with is we have a strong sense of individual property rights. I think that's very, very important. Part of that goes into kind of an unpopular, well, I guess it's popular in Texas, but the Second Amendment and having the right to have firearms, to protect your property, to protect your family. I mean, that's one of the things that was kind of dumbfounding to me as I was looking through Representative Bucy's voting history is he voted basically against every Second Amendment bill. And some of those were only, there would be like 110 to 20 or something. So it was really only the furthest left that were voting against them. And a vast majority of the Democrats in the House were voting in favor of these bills, and he was voting against them. The other thing I think is extremely important is we have, people call it the Texas miracle, the Texas economy. It's the 10th largest economy in the world, the state of Texas is. The oil and gas industry is huge, and I think we've made great strides with regard to pollution and making things clean. But if you follow, some of the rhetoric regarding the environment, you shut down the oil and gas in Texas, you're going to shut down our economy. One of my, not Representative Bucy, but there's a late libertarian that jumped in the campaign, is he wants to bring in gambling, and he wants to bring in, to boost the Texas economy. Bring in gambling and bring in free sale, the free growth and sale of marijuana and unregulated.
Let's just bring the crime, please, in the syndicate.
Right. Well, but my thing is we don't need that boost in our economy. Our economy is so strong, it's so diverse, and so we need to keep that. And how do we keep that? Is we keep the government out of business.
I have an idea. Why don't we bring all them in, and then we can defund the police? And then where are we all going to move is what I need to know, Mike. Where are we going to go?
And then we'll take away the Second Amendment at the same time.
Exactly. So we'll just go ahead and take away the Second Amendment. Yeah. Right. Greatest place in the world was to live prior to 2020 November.
Right.
Oh,
so those things are important to me. I believe in the sanctity of life. I believe that, my wife and I, we have two children, but we had one who passed away. My wife had to give birth to her, but it was a stillbirth, and she was 11 weeks old, and her name is Grace. And I got to hold her hand. I got to look into her face and see her. That was a baby. Grace was my child. Like I said, she had fingers, she had toes, she had eyes, she had a mouth at 11 weeks old. And she wasn't a baby just because my wife and I wanted her. She was a baby because she was a baby. She was a gift of God. So that's something that's very dear to my heart, is the sanctity of life. That when there's a heartbeat, there's a baby. That's important. There's a lot of other things, working municipalities, that I think that we need to secure. I have a pretty broad range of knowledge in law, but like water law is a big deal in this state, in municipalities, and I see how that's affected, particularly in areas of groundwater. I want to look at that. I want to rewrite some of the penal code issues where when you talk about communication and working together between counties and cities to make that smoother. So there's actually a lot of things that I would like to jump into on that. Also, I'd like to look at the CPS system, and how that works, and facilitating getting children out of those systems and into homes. I think that's really important as well, and I like to look at that. So there's a lot of issues that I would certainly want to.
Yeah, you're also an adoption attorney. I read your bio. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I've been blessed to help hundreds of families adopt. I'm actually the founder and the coordinator of Williamson County Adoption Day, which is November 6th this year. We're going to do it, and we're going to do it thanks to Judge Brandy Halford. We're going to do it partially live. We're the only ones who are going to do part of it live. I don't know if it's going to be outside in a parking garage, but we're going to do it. So yeah, that's a blessing to be able to be part of that. It's something I get to do do every year. So yes, I get to do that. It's awesome.
You know, one of my former employees started Central Texas Table of Grace, which is a transition home for children, and what a blessing that has been. I was so proud of her. I fired her so she could go change the world. And you know, so there's such a need when it comes to the kids and protection, and you know, it's got to feel like it's such a big elephant for you. So what is the first bite you're going to take going into it, right? It's the big elephant in the room. What is that first bite once you're elected? What are you going to do? What do you see the most pressing issue in your district right now would be?
The most pressing issue in our district, I believe, right now is the security and the safety. Like I said, in my district, we have a city that has slashed their police budget. They're down. They cut their, my son and I were having dinner at Mighty Fine here in Cedar Park on Friday night, and he was facing the TV and my back was to it. And so every time a headline would come on, he would read it to me. And so he reads to me a headline that says, crime spike, not increase, spike. I mean, that's I think that.
Well, if I was a criminal, I'd do it. I'd be like, well, hey, I can go burn it down, or I can go rob it. It's all cool.
Yeah. It said crime spike near the University of Texas, being a Longhorn.
I saw that. I actually saw that headline.
Okay. And so my son, who's 8 years old, asked me about that. And I turned around and looked at it. And my response is, well, what do you expect when you cut the police? I mean, that's what you're going to get. And that's in part of my district. Austin is, the University of Texas is not, but part of Austin is in my district. And so that's
that orange diploma behind you. You got that little weird thing about UT, right?
Yes, I do. You got it. Oh, and on my chair too. Also, I get a lot.
Exactly. So
I think that's going to be one of the biggest issues. Also, one of the obviously we're going into redistricting this session. So this session we're going to be writing not only our state house districts, not only our state senate districts, but also our congressional districts. And Texas is probably going to gain 2 more house states. So redistricting and budget are the 2 most important things that we're going to be doing this next legislative session.
And so if you're the average person and you're watching this and you're not as tied to some of the political stuff that you and I are, but especially you, how does that affect me? I'm sitting home in my house in Cedar Park, Texas. I'm a teacher. My husband, works hard. We've got, 2.3 kids. How does this affect them? How does it affect their paycheck, their taxes, their safety? I mean, give me that perspective for the person who's going to watch this that goes, okay, that's all great, but I don't have guns in my house and I don't do this. I mean, how does it affect the average citizen, whether you're elected or Mr. Bucy's elected?
So the biggest thing is the continuation of our Texas economy. And I've heard the arguments from people, stop talking about economy. It's not about money. It's about people. But how it's going to affect our economy, that influences everything. If you look at areas that have strong economies versus areas that have weaker economies, and how that influences everything. And so it filters down everything. It filters down from the government all the way down into your own pocketbook. So what your neighborhoods look like. The roads that you drive on, the schools that your kids go to, your law enforcement, if you have a fire and the fire department's going to come from, that's all going to get
the local job market. Let's be real. If taxes are raised, like what they're telling us is going to happen, small businesses are going to have to close. They're not going to be, they're already trying to survive COVID, right? Everyone's trying to make the big comeback from COVID. And now all of a sudden, the Democrats are talking about raising business taxes. It's like, how will these businesses survive?
Yeah, so there's 2 aspects to talk about that. And I was actually just about to get through one of the things that Representative Bucy has said on the forums is cutting these corporate loopholes. But he never says what the corporate loopholes do, and he never says how the corporate loopholes affect Texas. Now, you've heard Biden talk about.
Now he works for charter schools, doesn't he? Does he have a business that sustains charter schools?
Well, he works with
sells to charter schools.
Yeah, works with sports with charter schools. That's my understanding. Yeah.
Okay, I was just wondering.
But so that you got the 2 aspects. You got the big corporations that they provide so many jobs, and not just jobs to their companies, but because of the trickle down. One of the cities I represent had a big Halliburton facility, and I say had because it closed recently. And wow, the trickle down effect has been everything. Restaurants are closing. Hotels can't stay open. Now the small government's got to figure out what they're going to do with that loss of that sales tax that was coming through there. So the big corporations are so important to the areas because they help fund and keep the smaller businesses open. So you got that big aspect. So we need to keep that going in Texas, and economic development, bringing corporations in. I work in Cedar Park. We've done quite a bit of that. The other aspect, as you said, was the small businesses. And if you look at some of the things that other cities have done throughout the United States, and even Austin, you don't have to go very far with, mandating different types of leave for employees, no matter if they're part-time. Those are the types of restrictions you put on small business that are going to choke small business to death. And, we don't have a lot of time, but one of the things we talk about is raising the minimum wage to a level. I mean, I believe that the free market should dictate that. If you raise the minimum wage for jobs that the companies can't actually, make that money off that individual, what you're going to be doing is actually going to be losing jobs is what you're going to be doing. So we need to let the market control that, and that's going to filter down. That's going to keep our economy solid. The more we mess with it as governments, the worse it is. I believe that if we let Texans handle our recovery, our recovery will be solid.
Yeah, I have to tell you, as a business owner, the last thing I want to do is tango with the government. I'm like, I've done this for 25 years. I've been very successful. Do not get into my cookies, into my post toast, right? I don't need the government to tell me what to do and how to do it, because to your point, you let the free market decide. Right. If somebody wants to work for us and we pay a great wage, then they'll be there, and we can pay a great wage if our company is successful. Mm-hmm. Our company can be successful if we're not bogged down in red tape, taxes, and bureaucracy. Right? It's just this domino thing. All right. So final question. Do you think you're going to make a career out of politics, or is this something you're okay, I'm just going to keep going? Someday POTUS, what? I mean, I'm kind of kidding, but do you see staying in Texas in your backyard? I mean, what do you see for yourself? You're a young guy.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting question, Lisa. So
your wife is probably watching this going, tell her to stop right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah. My phone hasn't rang. So, so that's a good thing from her. So, when I was in law school, so I graduated in 99 from University of Texas School of Law. There was a law firm that was in Dallas that I was actually clerking with, and thought that I was going to end up working there. Well, one of the named partners in that firm was Domingo Garcia, and he was a Democratic state representative out of Dallas. And so during that session, I got the opportunity to work with him in his office there at the Capitol. And there were some aspects of that I really enjoyed, but there were some aspects of it that I didn't enjoy too much. So I told myself that politics was not going to be anything that I was going to get into. And, it wasn't until, I had the request back in, December of 17 to run for city council that I said, okay, I'll do city council. It's nonpartisan. Don't have to get into the politics side of it. Don't have to be a D or an R to run. Even though my background is R, I've always voted Republican. Don't have to get into that with city council. And so I did the city council thing. And I'll be honest with you, I thoroughly enjoyed being on the city council. I really felt like with my background, it gave me an opportunity to really get some things accomplished. I made some relationships with individuals that I hope are lifelong through that process. So, when they first asked me to run for state representative, I said no, just like that. Thank you, but no thank you. About 2 months later, they came back to me and they said, no, you really need to run. And here's why: it needs to be you that runs. And so I thought about it, prayed about it. As I was talking about it, just happened to be going through, I start my day every morning by reading the Bible. And I just happened to be reading through Esther and Nehemiah at that time. And so decided to run for this. So right now, state representative is my focus. If anything happens, that's going to be between, it's going to be up to God to direct that to me. So no, I don't have any aspirations of moving beyond here. I'm just focused right now on state representative and, doing everything and making my family and making God proud for being in this spot right now.
Well, I want to thank you very much. Number one, for agreeing to this interview. And number two, for putting it out there, for answering the call. There's many people out there, years and years, long time ago, they reached out to me, the Republican Party, and they said, you need to run. I was like, nope, not doing it. And, because I just, I didn't feel led to do it. Number two, I just didn't want to get in the muck of all of it. Right. And so, I was very involved with U.S. Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison. I ran her campaign for Williamson County. And I just saw the ugly side of politics. And so I want to commend you. I want to thank your wife and your family, because boy, it's a whole lot more contentious today than it was the 20 years ago that, I was working heavily with the party, and, just for taking a chance. And so I guess most importantly, Mike, I'd like to say that you've earned my vote. And I know my husband's watching this right now, and to tell you that you've earned his vote also. So that I appreciate. And, whatever the outcome is, I think you and I are both people of faith, and we both know that, we gave it all we got, and, you put everything on the field, and at some point, the cards were going to fall where they fall. But right. I would just tell everybody out there who watches me and who follows me, vote, because it's, you don't have a right to criticize our great country and the democracy of our country if you sat on the sidelines, and didn't vote or didn't do things like this, because I'm sure I'm going to get some blowback for doing this. And, and I somebody said that to me today, and I said, I have to find out from him live, and I'm not going to tell him what I'm going to say, but I want to know, because to me, this is probably one of the most important votes that I'll make living in Cedar Park, and to my friends who live there in Leander and Northwest Austin, because this is going to affect us directly. This is going to affect our backyard. Again, we all have one vote, but nationally it's a little harder to get involved and to make a difference as it is in our own backyard. So, Mike, I wish you luck. I wish you success. You've earned our vote. You've earned my vote, my family's support, and I'm anxious to attend the victory party. Hopefully we will have an election that we can call on November. Is it 2nd or 3rd? Third. Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. But early voting starts tomorrow. So I'm just going to go get it knocked out. I'm going to go just get it knocked out. So, sir, thank you very much. And again, thank you to your family. Thank you for your service to our community and ultimately our state and our country. So very nice to get to meet you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for taking your time and using this forum. Like you said, you're probably going to get some blowback, and I'm hearing that from a lot of people. But thank you.
But you know what? If you don't stand for something, you fall for anything.
That's right.
All right, Mike, thank you. Take care and good luck.
Thank you.